Right now, there is a very specific panic echoing through the halls of the White House. And it's happening because Donald Trump's favorite weapon just jammed. For the last year, you've watched Trump use the US dollar and extreme tariff threats to hold Canada hostage. He demanded total loyalty. He handed Prime Minister Mark Carney a brutal public ultimatum: bend the knee, surrender your trade sovereignty, or watch your economy burn to the ground. He assumed Canada was trapped. He assumed Canada had nowhere else to go. He was entirely wrong. Carney didn't bend. He built a firewall. Just minutes ago, the alert crossed the wires. Brazil and Canada just bypassed the United States entirely, signing a staggering $270 billion resource pact that completely cuts out the American banking system. Trump tried to box Canada in, but Carney just flipped the entire geopolitical board. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you the exact move that sealed the deal, why Washington was caught completely blind, and how this massive, historic shockwave is going to hit your wallet directly. Don't blink, because the world is shifting in real time and you're watching history unfold. To understand the sheer scale of the earthquake that just hit the global markets, we have to look at the reality on the ground today. Yesterday morning, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down Donald Trump's emergency tariffs on Canada and Mexico. It was a massive, humiliating legal defeat for the White House. But instead of taking the loss, stepping back, and coming to the negotiating table like a normal administration, Trump doubled down. He immediately signed a legally dubious executive order slapping a new blanket 10% global tariff on everything. He went on social media and threatened to weaponize national security laws to crush Canadian steel, aluminum, and critical supply chains. He wanted to show the world he was still the boss. He wanted to project absolute dominance. But while Trump was rage posting on his phone and firing advisors who told him to calm down, Mark Carney was quietly working the international lines. Today, the result of those quiet conversations was broadcast live from Brasilia. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva and Prime Minister Mark Carney stood at a podium and announced a jaw-dropping $270 billion critical resources pact. This isn't just a handshake agreement. It is a legally binding framework covering energy, agriculture, and the critical minerals required for the next century of military and consumer technology. But here is the single detail that sent a cold sweat down the backs of every trader on Wall Street. The entire $270 billion deal deliberately, specifically, and mathematically bypasses the United States dollar. You heard that right. Two of the largest economies in the Americas are freezing Washington out. They are setting up a direct clearing mechanism. No U.S. banks, no U.S. dollars, no leverage for Donald Trump. Brazil has been furious with the United States for months. Trump's tariffs have squeezed their economy, and his recent highly aggressive foreign policy maneuvers crossed a massive red line for Lula's administration. Brazil felt bullied. Canada felt bullied. So Carney stepped into the void and offered a fundamentally different path. A partnership based on mutual survival, a coalition of the sane. What happened today isn't just a trade agreement. It is a declaration of financial independence from the United States. Trump pushed his closest allies to the absolute breaking point, and today, the alliance finally broke. Now, you might be thinking, it's just another trade deal. Politicians sign these pieces of paper all the time, and nothing really changes. No, this is different. This is deeply structural. When you look past the press releases and dig into the actual mechanics of what Carney and Lula just signed, you realize this is a direct, calculated attack on the core pillars of American economic dominance. Let's look at the receipts. Receipt number 1, the mineral lever. Look at your smartphone. Look at the battery in an electric vehicle. Look at the guidance systems on the defense platforms the U.S. military relies on to project power. They all require a highly specific cocktail of critical minerals: lithium, copper, nickel, rare earths, and niobium. Right now, the United States is desperate for these materials. They need them to compete with China's tech sector. They need them to rebuild their own manufacturing base. And where do those minerals come from? Canada and Brazil. Before today, the U.S. assumed it had a captive market. But under this new $270 billion pact, Canada and Brazil are aggressively integrating their supply chains. They are pooling their massive natural resources. If the U.S. wants Canadian copper or Brazilian niobium, Washington doesn't get to dictate the price anymore. Carney and Lula just formed a unified commodity bloc. If Trump follows through on his threat to slap a 25% tariff on Canadian aluminum, Canada will simply redirect that metal south to Brazil or across the Atlantic to Europe. The supply chain just rerouted itself around the United States. The leverage is gone. Receipt number 2, the dollar bypass. This is the part that genuinely has the Federal Reserve in a state of emergency. For nearly 80 years, the U.S. dollar has been the undisputed reserve currency of the world. It is the oxygen of global trade. If a mining company in Toronto wants to buy industrial equipment from Sao Paulo, that transaction is historically priced in dollars and clears through a correspondent bank in New York. That specific mechanism gives the U.S. government incredible, almost unimaginable power. It's why American financial sanctions work. It's the very reason Donald Trump feels he can boss the entire globe around. He controls the toll booth. Mark Carney just built a new highway that bypasses the toll booth entirely. You have to remember who Mark Carney is. He is the former governor of the Bank of England. He is the former governor of the Bank of Canada. He spent a decade at Goldman Sachs. He understands the deep, complex plumbing of the global financial system better than anyone currently sitting in Trump's cabinet. The new Canada-Brazil pact establishes a bilateral clearinghouse. From this moment on, trade between Carney's new coalition and Brazil will be settled in local currencies, backed by alternative digital ledgers and commodity swaps. The money never touches New York. The U.S. Treasury can't track it. Trump can't tax it. The dollar is completely sidelined, rendering Trump's tariff threats mathematically useless. Receipt number 3, the market panic. The stock market never lies. Politicians spin, but capital tells the truth. When the news of the $270 billion pact broke this morning, you could watch the realization hit the trading floor in real time. The U.S. dollar index, the DXY, slipped immediately, plunging faster than it has in 14 months. U.S. Treasury bond yields ticked up violently as foreign confidence evaporated. Wall Street analysts began issuing emergency flashing red notes to their institutional clients. Why the sudden panic? Because the smartest money in the room just realized that Trump's America First strategy is rapidly devolving into America alone. If Canada, historically America's closest neighbor, its biggest trading partner, its most integrated military and economic ally, can successfully bypass the U.S. financial system, the dam is officially broken. Who is next? The European Union, Japan, South Korea. Investors are waking up to the terrifying reality that Trump's erratic, aggressive tariff threats aren't protecting the U.S. economy. They are quarantining it. And capital is fleeing the chaos. Receipt number 4, the deafening silence from Europe. When a major geopolitical shock happens, you look at who rushes to defend the United States. Today, nobody did. Normally, the U.S. State Department would immediately lean on its European allies to condemn a move that threatens the dollar. But Brussels has been dead silent. In fact, reports are already leaking out of Davos that European finance ministers have been quietly briefed on the Canada-Brazil clearing mechanism for weeks. They aren't condemning it. They are studying it. They are looking at Carney's blueprint and wondering how fast they can plug their own economies into it. The receipts are clear. The world isn't just angry at Donald Trump. The world is actively organizing to strip him of his power. To understand how we arrived at this historic breaking point, you have to look closely at how Donald Trump operates when he thinks he has the upper hand. He only knows one move: the threat. Trump views global trade and global alliances as a strict zero-sum game. In his mind, for America to win, you have to lose. He uses tariffs not as a surgical economic tool, but as a blunt force weapon, operating under the assumption that the sheer gravitational size of the U.S. consumer market will eventually force everyone to kneel. He threatened Canada with 25% tariffs to force total border compliance. He threatened 100% tariffs on any nation that dared to move away from the US dollar. He alienated Brazil's leadership. He picked needless fights with Mexico. He alienated the European Union. He treated heads of state like contestants on a reality television show. He escalates with threats. But here is the critical flaw in his strategy, the blind spot that is destroying his leverage. The world is responding with alternatives. When you threaten your friends every single day, when you make your currency a weapon rather than a tool for stability, eventually those friends stop trying to appease you. They stop negotiating. They start building firewalls. Trump's leverage is backfiring in real time, and he is trapped by his own tactics. Look at the cause and effect. He threatened massive tariffs on Canadian goods. As a direct result, Canadian and Brazilian companies paused their planned investments in American factories. U.S. supply chains got nervous. Logistics companies started looking for different ports outside of U.S. jurisdiction. The cost of raw materials in the American Midwest skyrocketed. And who pays for that? The American voter pays for that. Trump thought he could dictate terms to Ottawa. He thought Canada was structurally weak. He thought he could use the upcoming USMCA trade review to hold a gun to Canada's head and strip away its economic advantages. But his relentless bullying created a vacuum. He created a geopolitical environment so toxic, so deeply unpredictable, that a massive emerging economy like Brazil was willing to take a historic, multi-billion-dollar risk just to get out of Washington's blast radius. Trump is losing control because you cannot bully a global market forever. You can only distort it, squeeze it, and threaten it for so long before it roots around you. Water always finds a way down the mountain. Capital always finds a way around a blockade. And right now, the entire global economy is watching Donald Trump swing a sledgehammer in an empty room, while Mark Carney quietly changes the locks on all the doors. This brings us to the Prime Minister and the stark, glaring contrast in leadership playing out on the world stage. Mark Carney does not fight like Donald Trump fights. You will never see Carney posting deranged, all-caps rants on social media at 3 in the morning. You won't see him hurling personal insults at American voters or throwing tantrums during press briefings. Carney operates on a completely different frequency. He uses systems, he uses international alliances, he uses the cold, hard logic of the markets. When Trump yells, Carney calculates. He absorbs the pressure and masterfully turns it into leverage. For the last year, while the White House has been an exhausting circus of staff firings, bitter legal battles, and impulsive executive orders drafted on the fly, Carney has been moving like a ghost through the halls of global power. He was at the World Economic Forum, calmly laying out a highly technical vision for strategic economic autonomy. He went to Asia to secure preliminary tariff reductions. He is currently preparing to go to the Munich Security Conference to lock in ironclad European defense and trade ties. He is not isolating Canada. He is building a coalition of the stable. Carney's message to the global markets is ruthlessly simple. Canada is open for business. Canada is a reliable, predictable partner. And Canada will absolutely not be held hostage by the emotional whims of one unpredictable man sitting in Washington. This $270 billion pact with Brazil is the absolute masterpiece of that strategy. It is flawless execution. It's not just about selling potash or gold or agricultural goods. It is about raw sovereignty. It is about proving in dollars and cents that middle powers can band together to create a stable, parallel financial system when the reigning superpower goes rogue. Carney is playing a 20-year-long game. He knows that credibility with the bond markets is infinitely more powerful than political theater on cable news. By securing this pact, by executing the dollar bypass, he just proved to the entire world that Canada has real, viable options. And in any high-stakes negotiation, the side with options is the side that wins. So what does this actually mean for you? Why should you, sitting at home right now, care if Brazil and Canada are clearing trades in local currencies thousands of miles away? Because even if you don't care about global finance, and even if you don't care about Canada, Canada touches your life every single day. If you are sitting in a diner in Ohio or driving to work in Texas or paying bills in Florida right now, you are going to feel the shockwave of this deal. The United States enjoys something economists call exorbitant privilege because the dollar is the world's reserve currency. The U.S. government can print money, run massive deficits, and keep interest rates relatively low because the rest of the world is forced to buy dollars to trade with each other. When that dominance fractures, when countries like Canada and Brazil prove they don't need the dollar anymore, that privilege evaporates. And when it evaporates, inflation goes up fast. The U.S. government can no longer export its debt. Interest rates stay brutally high. Your mortgage costs more. Your car loan is suddenly unaffordable. The balance on your credit card becomes a trap you can't escape. Furthermore, when Canada redirects its critical high-grade minerals to Brazil and the European Union instead of the United States, the American factories building your electric cars, your home appliances, and your energy grid face instant supply shortages. The price of an American-made vehicle shoots up. Manufacturing slows down, shifts are cut, jobs leave. Donald Trump stood on stage and promised that his tariffs would build an impenetrable fortress around the U.S. economy and bring all the manufacturing back home. But this $270 billion pact proves the exact devastating opposite is happening. Advanced manufacturing and resource processing are fleeing the United States. They are moving to jurisdictions that offer sanity, stability, and predictable rules. This is a historic, flashing red signal about the total collapse of U.S. leadership. For 80 years, the world implicitly trusted the United States to uphold the basic rules of the global economy. Now, the world is actively, aggressively insuring itself against the United States. The trust is gone. And history tells us that once trust leaves the financial system, it takes generations to get it back. There was a moment during the signing ceremony in Brasilia today that perfectly captured this massive shift in global power. The cameras were flashing, the documents were signed. A reporter from an American network shouted a question from the back of the room, asking if this deal was meant to be a direct provocation to President Trump. Carney didn't scowl, he didn't raise his voice. He simply adjusted his microphone, looked directly at the cameras, and said, "We are not interested in provocations. We are interested in mathematics. And the math dictates that Canada will trade where its sovereignty is respected." It was chilling. Carney didn't pick a fight. He simply raised the cost of ignoring Canada to a price Donald Trump cannot afford to pay. This is the part of the story where traditional leaders usually step in to calm the waters. The diplomats open back channels. The temperature is systematically lowered. But Donald Trump doesn't do calm. He doesn't understand de-escalation. We are looking at 3 near-future scenarios playing out over the next few weeks, and every single one of them is dangerous. Scenario A, this is the most likely outcome. Trump erupts. He watches the footage from Brazil and takes the currency bypass as a deep personal humiliation. In a fit of rage, he demands his Treasury Department find a way to illegally sanction the Canadian-Brazilian clearinghouses. He unilaterally slaps the full 50% Section 232 national security tariffs on all Canadian metals purely out of spite. The trade war instantly goes from a cold conflict to a scorching hot one. Supply chains snap overnight and inflation in the United States spikes to levels that will trigger a massive recession. Scenario B, escalation and total isolation. The Carney-Lula coalition doesn't back down, it grows. Mexico, exhausted and bleeding from Trump's constant border threats, quietly sends envoys to join the alternative clearing mechanism. The European Union, watching the undeniable success of the Brazil pact, starts drafting similar bilateral deals with Ottawa. Trump is left screaming into the void, threatening a world that has simply put him on mute. The U.S. economy slows down drastically, suffocating as it gets boxed out of global growth. Scenario C, the unexpected, humiliating reversal. Wall Street forces Trump's hand. The U.S. stock market absolutely terrified of permanently losing access to North and South American critical resources, throws a historic tantrum. Trillions of dollars in market cap vanish in a week. The donors and corporate titans who fund Trump's political machine march into the Oval Office and tell him he has to back down or they will abandon him. He is forced to claim a fake cosmetic victory, quietly roll back the tariff threats, and pretend the whole crisis never happened. But here is the terrifying truth for Washington. Even if scenario C happens, the damage is already done. The world has seen the blueprint. The code has been broken. The global South and the global North now know exactly how to survive and thrive without Washington's permission. We have just witnessed a tectonic shift in the geopolitical landscape, a $270 billion fracture in the very foundation of the global financial system. Donald Trump wanted total, unquestioned leverage over his neighbors. He wanted to rule by fear. Instead, he forced his allies to realize their own immense power. He pushed Canada to the edge, and Mark Carney pushed back with the weight of the world behind him. So I want to hear from you. Do you think Mark Carney is brilliantly protecting Canada's future, or is he intentionally daring Donald Trump to overreact and destroy his own economy? Drop your take below in the comments right now. I read all of them, and this debate is just getting started. The world is shifting in real time, and the mainstream media is days behind the curve. If you want the actual receipts and the truth before the headlines catch up, hit that subscribe button, stay sharp, keep your eyes open, and I'll see you in the next update.